Oh, I just remembered I have something in the oven. Let me get that first. Hi, I'm Mo. Today it is raining and it is gray and it is a little cold, but I can tell that like spring is right around the corner. There are like buds on the trees and flowers. This rain is gonna make everything like super green and super lush, and I am so excited for that. While it is kind of gray and cloudy and foggy and icky out, I wanted to start my try a chapter video. In my TBR shelf organization / clean out, I selected 5 books that I really wasn't sure about. I either didn't know what they were about at all, or I wasn't sure if they really interested me, or they were long and I wasn't sure if I was really gonna read them. I'm not really a synopsis reader. I don't really love to like read the full synopsis. Sometimes I'll like skim it, or sometimes I'll read part of it and then kind of stop when it gets too spoilery. I plan on reading a chapter of each book and seeing if I'm interested in reading it, or if it can go back in my basement box books, or if it can be gotten rid of entirely. I might have to go out in an hour or so. I might start a few chapters now and then film the rest of this later. The first book we're going to try a chapter of is The Society of S by Susan Hubbard. I don't know where I got this, maybe a book sale. It was in my basement box books. I think it has something to do with vampires. It's like got a pretty end page. That's cool. Should I read the preface or the chapter? I've never done this before. The first chapter's kind of long. It's like 24 pages. So I'm going to read, there's 3 quotes in the beginning of the book, and then there is a preface, which is just a few pages. So I'm going to go ahead and read that and see what I think. I have to take my glasses off too, because I can't read my glasses on. Okay, I'm back. I'm heating up some french fries for my husband. And I forgot them in the oven. They're really hot. Well, interesting. It starts off with a story about, you assume it's a girl's mother and father and how they met. And then you kind of find out that her father is telling her this story. She's 13 years old and she is desperate to know more about her mother, who she doesn't know. She says, my father's telling me more about my mother and more about himself. So it's very short. It was only like 5 pages and it was interesting. It takes place in, or at least that portion where her parents met takes place in Savannah, and I've only read one other book set in Savannah, and that is Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which is one of my all-time favorite films, and the book is also really good. It is actually a non-fiction. I've never been to Savannah. Although I'm not like super thrilled with books about like young girls, I feel like she's gonna be older in the rest of this book. Like that to me seemed to be her exploring her past, or her remembering her past now in that preface. So far this is definitely a keeper. Sounds interesting. Next book. This is Maisie Dobbs, written by Jacqueline Winspear. This is a mystery, a historical fiction mystery. I've had it for a really long time. This was also brought up at that same time for whatever I was doing then. I needed to find some like mystery books. I've had this since I worked at a cafe. It was on like the take a book, leave a book shelf. It's at 1929, and it is about a woman detective after the First World War, before the Second World War maybe. What is the first chapter of this one look like? Chapter 1 is only like 5 pages, so I am going to go ahead and read the first chapter of Maisie Dobbs. Okay, so Maisie Dobbs starts with Maisie Dobbs walking down the street. She's obviously an elegant woman, and she has a je ne sais quoi that even the newspaper vendor notices. He at first thinks she's probably stuck up because she's wearing a rather smart outfit, and she has a lot of confident bearing. She then talks to him, and he sees that she is more of an everyday person, and he amends his thoughts to think that she is not stuck up, but wonders at her history a little bit. She goes on to open a office building, and you see that she has rented out an office for herself to become a PI. You hear a little bit about her former employer and sounds like possibly mentor, and you hear from the caretaker of the building as well, who it turns out she helped when she was a nurse during the First War. So she talks kind of ruefully and wistfully about a little bit about her time during the First World War being a nurse. She obviously had a relationship with one of the doctors that is not around anymore, either the relationship or the doctor, you're not sure. And you wonder what her private investigation firm is going to be like and who is helping her. Right off the bat, there's definitely going to be some war stuff, and there's definitely going to be some melancholy, and there's definitely going to be some reflection, which is like not my favorite thing, but it was interesting and it didn't make me not want to read it. We'll see. Another book for me to try a chapter is The Magdalien, Martyrs by Ken Bruen. This is the author of The Guards. I read The Guards several years ago. I actually recently just unhauled it into a free little library. My boss and friend really like these books. They are, I think, Irish or Scottish former police detective / alcoholic who gets wrapped up in murders and, ends up having to do some detective work. So this, I think, is the second in the series. I'm not 100% sure. Its prologue and its first chapter is only about 5 pages. So let's try this one out. Maybe it'll help explain what happened in the last book. Alright, well, that didn't really tell me a lot. The prologue was a young woman who seems like she is living in a nunnery and a reform institution for unwed mothers. It sounds like she either had an abortion or had a baby and had to give it up, and a nun comes in. These are not nice nuns, these are cruel nuns, and lashes her with her rosary beads. It seems like that character is dead, and that is going to be part of the mystery that we have to solve. And the first chapter is meeting with our main character. He is depressed over December, and he is rationing his drinking and drug use so that he can get through the month. By mid-December, he has taken all his drink and drugs and landed in the hospital. It does take place in Ireland. It was very short chapter and seems like it would be very quick to get through. It's only 274 pages. It's probably a very quick read. The first chapter didn't really grab me. Like, I definitely want to read these other 2 books more so far doing these chapters. I thought that the first book was very, very heavy with dialect. Let's read another one. This book is The Secret Lives of Cowboys by Tom Groneburg, and I could not tell when I was looking at this book whether it was a nonfiction or a non-nonfiction. I have no idea where I got this. I probably picked it up because I really like the cover for some reason. It's kind of ugly, but like I'm drawn to it. So this looks like this doesn't have chapters. It looks like it has parts. There is a preface. So we've had a preface, a prologue, and another preface. I'm going to read the preface, which looks like it's 4 pages long, and see how we go. Whew. All right, prologue done. So this definitely is a nonfiction and a memoir of Tom Cronenberg, who at 24 goes out to become a ranch hand. The prologue is kind of about how he's been a ranch hand for a couple of weeks, but really does not understand anything. His boss gives him a task, sends him on his way, and he can't even figure out how to use the equipment for the task. He comes back to his boss, tells him that he can't figure it out, and his boss does it really quickly quickly and patiently. Obviously, he is not skilled at what he's trying to do, but it seems like maybe he's finding people who will help him along his way. I have a feeling it's not going to be that good. I don't know if it's because he seems like a young writer or if the story itself is, you know, trying to do something that just seems to me like setting it up for failure. It's only 257 pages. The type is enormous. The chapters are short. It seems interesting. So this is not a no either. So this is a maybe. So far I'm kind of striking out at eliminating books. And that leaves me with one book to try a chapter of, Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I've heard a lot of great things about Blake Crouch, mostly from BookTube. I had never heard of him before. I know that this is sci-fi, but I don't really know anything else about this. Oh boy, okay. The first chapter of this is 45 pages long, so I think what I'm going to do is take a break and come back to this in a little while. We went out and we had some lunch and I am back and I have read the first chapter of Dark Matter. I did end up reading all 45 pages of the first chapter, and partly that's because there wasn't really a good place to stop. And another reason is this is such a weird paperback. Like, I thought this was just a regular mass market paperback, but it's actually like longer and thinner. It's not thinner than a normal paperback in the book form, but the writing is so weird. Look at the margins in the center of this page. And look at how few words there are on each line. It's a little bit disconcerting to read, actually. By the end of the 45 pages, I had gotten a little bit more used to it. I feel like I would love to read this in more of a trade paperback size. In the first chapter of Dark Matter, we meet our main character, Jason, and he is having family night and dinner with his family, his wife and 15-year-old son. And he lets his wife know that he was supposed to go have drinks with a colleague to congratulate him on a huge grant that he's recently received for his place in science. There's kind of a little banter between he and his wife about how starting a family, they sort of missed out on their chosen career. That is touched upon briefly. His wife convinces him to go out. He goes out. He kind of realizes that that is not the world he wants to be in, and he heads home to be with his wife and son. As he's walking home, he is kidnapped, held at gunpoint, beaten up, and taken to a remote location outside of Chicago, stripped naked, and made to march into an abandoned warehouse, eventually drugged, and passes out. So that's where our first chapter ends. This was probably the most exciting and dynamic first chapter that we read. I didn't love it. I get the feeling that Dark Matter is going to have to do with time travel and with alternate dimensions, and I don't know if I'm really in the mood for that. We'll be keeping Dark Matter, but we'll be putting it on hold. Out of the other 4 books that I read, the most intriguing was Society of S, and that's one I will definitely be wanting to read. It seems like it'll go really quickly, and it already grabbed me just with the preface of who our main character is, what her history is, and what adventures she's going to have in this novel. Out of the last 3, I definitely want to read the Cowboy book. I don't hold out much hope for it. As far as a memoir nonfiction, I think it'll be interesting. I think working on a ranch is an interesting lifestyle that I have never aspired to or thought that much about. And out of these 2 mysteries, I definitely am more interested in Maisie Dobbs, so I will be keeping Maisie Dobbs on my shelf. I think the Magdalien Martyrs is actually the next book I'm going to read. If it does have Irish dialect in it, it will work for one of the prompts in Linguathon. I could also be wrong, and I could see this being a total DNF. I'm going to look up the guards and try to remember what I've forgotten about the first book. This was a really fun challenge. I was hoping a few of these books would not strike my fancy at all, and I would be able to unhaul them. All of them were interesting in their own ways. I think I'll be keeping all of them and reading them eventually. I really enjoyed that it was a new way to pick a book that I want to read next, and also to kind of get a better idea of what each of these books are about. They kind of whetted my appetite for each book. Have you ever done a try a chapter? Have you had results like mine where you end up liking all the books, or have you had it where you didn't like any of the books? Leave us a link down below and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Bye.